Hello friends, this is the Owl, and it's time that we had a delicate conversation. No, it's not about the birds or the bees, it's about the big thing that we're kicking off with this video. So, as mentioned on the YouTubes, we've actually run into a bit of difficulty out there in the real world, not something I can really discuss in any detail here, but the sum and the total of it is that we're skating even further out on the rim of that catastrophe curve we call our finances. And because I'm not a big fan of e-begging, unless it's down to that or starve, what I would rather do is some sort of quid pro quo in order to encourage more people to sign up on the Patreon. So, for the month of August, I am going to be doing a special patron drive event with some pretty fun and hopefully exciting rewards at specific milestones. Most importantly though, from my side, we're flat out doubling the production cycle. Mrs. Owl is going to be putting in some extra baby owl wrangling time, and I am going to be going all out. So, yep. That means 4 videos in 4 weeks, folks. Lots of content. As to the milestones I mentioned, well, the Patreon is, at present, at around 500 USD, and, well, we want to push our luck, shoot the moon, maybe end up in the stars and double that. So, at 600, we will be releasing the first Mr. Owl prototype that Mrs. Owl came up with. Oh, this one is cursed, folks. Think Cartman as an owl. I'm sure you will all have a chuckle at what the owl may very well have looked like. At 750, Mrs. Owl will do her first guest video, probably covering that one dark isekai manga that you all keep requesting, Tumty Tumty Gluttony or something. She knows it, she loves it, she knows way more about Korean culture than I do, so this will likely be really fun. At 900, I will do a video series on that new Silent Hill game. Yes, the Ryukishi one. The chap that wrote Higurashi, for those not in the know. I'm sure there will be lots of awesome cultural stuff here. Think the Binary Star series, but better. And finally, if we do manage to get to the 1,000 a month goal, I will be committing to an even more accelerated production schedule permanently. Maybe not 4 videos a month, I make huge videos, but 3 is not out of the question. This will mean lots of owl content for those of you that like my stuff. So, yep, that's me. Flate me Studious 8. Head on over to the Patreon and sign on up. Plenty of awesome benefits aside from the drive, and as I think I just heard Baby Owl waking up, let's get this show on the road. Hello my friends, this is the Owl, and holy crap, yes, at last we are here, kind of. Arc 3 of Higurashi, aka Tatarigoroshi, which translates something like curse killing, is another fairly divisive arc, and yeah, oh man, I get why. Let's just say that this one is slow for a while, and it really does, in places, start to feel like we're treading ground that we've already, well, trod. time loops. That said, it's probably in my top 3, along with Onikakushi and Sumi Horoboshi. And yeah, I'll give you a quick pair of spoilers here. The first is that, as mentioned, Volume 1 of this arc is slow. Volume 2 of this arc is where Higurashi definitely begins to tip its hand. It's where we start to learn that maybe we need to forget about the answers to this mystery for now, because it's entirely possible that we're not asking the right questions. There is a moment here, towards the end, on the first time reading this, that absolutely blew my socks off. You will see it when we get there. But this is also one where, honestly, if you think the right way and apply what we've learned thus far, you could probably get maybe halfway to answering the whole thing. The second is that, see, the Higurashi series is divided into the 4 question arcs and the 4 ass-numbingly long answer arcs corresponding to each of these, aside from the 4th arc and the 8th arc, which are kind of their own thing. And the answer arc to Tatarigoroshi, Minagoroshi, is oof. Meyakushi is the really dark and squicky one, well, one of the 2 really dark and squicky ones, but Minagoroshi is the really bleak and depressing one. We will get there. Anyway, we have a lot to talk about, so let's get cracking. We open with some truly lovely color pages, introducing our artist for this arc, the capable but unspectacular Jiro Suzuki, who, as far as I know, has only worked on Ryukishi projects. They feature heavily in Umineko, for example, and we jump right back into familiar territory, with Keiichi introducing us to Hinamizawa. So yeah, skip. We actually get a bit of a red herring, showing him meeting with Rena, but it's actually not a Rena arc. This one is all about Satako. Yeah, for those of you who've read this a long time ago, you just winced. Yup, it's that one. I will say though, while I like Jiro Suzuki's art well enough, it's nowhere near as good as we got in the first 2 arcs, which may be one of the reasons why Arc 3 is so divisive. As they head to school, they link up with Mion again, and once they arrive, the fun begins, as Satako once again outwits Keiichi with a funny trap. As always, it's all very happy and wholesome to start, setting us up for the horror and darkness to come. Just trust me, this time it'll be a while. And as much as I would love to skip the slow world and character building comprising the entirety of frigging Volume 1, there's kind of a lot here that'll be important later. Oh, so important. So what I'm going to do is say that if you are waiting for the dark stuff, I would actually stop this video now, fussbait until part 2 of Tatarigoroshi. I promise it won't be too long. And once it is out, you can just watch both of them back to back. I was actually debating making one of these feature-length videos, but for reasons you will learn shortly, I decided against it. Where was I? Oh right. Outside later, the fun continues as they scale the nearby mountain. Yeah, I discussed this in Lollipop or a Bullet, which, without too many spoilers, I strongly believe that manga is heavily inspired by this arc. Any sizable local hill will generally be referred to as a mountain. But there's one thing to take note of in terms of enormous foreshadowing. Trust me, hang on to this one for way later. As, after Satako catches him in a snare, he says that if she wanted to, she could probably hold off an army on this mountain, given time to set up. Yeah. Even I, who have read this thing a load of times, am constantly noticing new subtleties and foreshadowing every time I go through. It's so good. It's like hot fuzz in that regard. And speaking of foreshadowing, in a game of hide and seek, I think, Keiichi stumbles onto an odd sight. It's the abandoned machinery and the materials for the building of the dam. This leads us into meeting Tomitake for the arc, and we get a refresher on the dark history of Hinamizawa and the tragic and bloody conclusion of the dam project. Oh yeah, Tatarigoroshi is where the manga starts dialing up the blood and guts a tad. Nothing compared to what we'll get later, oh boy, just you wait. The answer arcs can be nasty in places. Later, the group discusses the dam project, and they actually discover a monument commemorating the dam resistance and their eventual success, revealing yet again the theme of small-town collectivism and standing firm against traitors and outsiders, a theme that will be extensively explored as we go on. Then we get... okay, yeah, I will stand my ground on Suzuki's artwork being unspectacular, but damn it, this is a gorgeous double spread, showing us the little valley town in the sunset. It really does capture a certain mood, although I think that, on closer inspection, it's one of those stampy composite things with a real photograph that Mrs. Owl is always telling me about. This photograph, I'm pretty sure. Regardless, I actually quite like this look. As this little segment comes to a close, we get some more genuinely spooky foreshadowing. I think the original Japanese reads something like, "Little did we know, Satako would soon be the one to be caught in a trap, a cruel one. Meep." But again, that's a ways away. The next day, Keiichi catches ill and stays home from school with a cold, but he's actually got quite a fever, meaning that this is likely flu. Now, this is one of the funny little quirks of the culture over there in terms of work. If you come down with basically any bug that isn't the trots or the clammy D or the clammy V, and short of going to the hospital, you will refer to it as a cold. If you say, "Oh, I need to beg off work today, I've got the flu," you are going to have your supervisor showing up to your house to drive you to the hospital, or potentially assuming that you can't do it yourself and calling you an ambulance. Influenza is considered very serious over there. Ask me how I know. Boy, that was a whole thing. Sure enough, Keiichi heads down to the local clinic. Small towns generally have one, with a local doctor and a nurse or two assisting. And these guys run the gamut, from really competent, if gruff and no-nonsense middle-aged lady that took a pay cut because she loves the countryside, to doddering old dingbat that'll tell you to drink snake blood mixed with sake for your, honestly, name a thing. If you need more serious medical attention, you will be ambulanced or helivaced to the nearest major town or city, which is where the hospital will be. Now, he immediately runs into holy shitballs. Wabam! Mio Takano, who, let's just say, I suspect the town has a higher than usual rate of minor illnesses amongst the local men. Just to give them an excuse. Seriously, that little nurse, bodice with the stockings? Yowza. She gives us our lead into the curse of Oyashiro-sama and all of that good stuff. This time it's mostly a variation on the demon story from Watanagashi. Again, we're retreading a lot of territory here. Demons come out of swamp, Oyashiro calms demons, and lets the townsfolk live in peace with them. Not much new info, cursedy curse, deathity vanish. And we also get to properly meet, oh dear, Dr. Irie. There you are, you weird bastard. Let's just say this guy is controversial. We will get into why later, and that'll need to be handled with extreme delicacy. Keiichi returns to school the next day, and we get some more really charming fun between him and the girls. But at home, as before, Keiichi's parents need to go away on business, leaving him home alone, despite him still feeling shite-ass. And also, saying they won't leave him any money to get pre-made food, so he will need to cook for himself. Dude, I know that this is a plot contrivance to both leave him alone and have his friends come over, but bloody hell, I think that Mr. and Mrs. Maebara may be the actual villains of the story. Regardless, the girls decide to teach him how to fish, metaphorically speaking, and this leads into all sorts of hijinks, including a pretty fun bit, where it turns out that Satako, despite talking a big game, is actually a notoriously bad cook. Now, we're not going to be going into gender politics in Japan here, but very, very short version. Men do not cook at all, unless you're like a chef or something. It'd be looked on as weird at best, leading to some funny situations. I know that despite me being an okay cook, don't ask Mrs. Owl, I was constantly having female co-workers show up at my house with pre-cooked meals, just to make sure I was eating right. In retrospect, I could have been in like Flynn with the younger ones a few times there. Past Mr. Owl was dumb, but it's actually not unusual. Men are not expected to cook even for themselves. However, eating out in Japan, unless you're getting Western food or some fancy shit, is remarkably cheap. You can get a gyudon or something for like $3 to $4, and there are oodles of options when it comes to pre-made food, including boxed and freshly pre-cooked meals from your local convenience stores. And as these are prepared fresh, if you go in late enough, you can get any of them for half price. And wow, even at full price, many of these are really damn good for what you pay. Otherwise, believe you me, it's not just the men who would think you're odd. I've had multiple girlfriends over there get really narky when I try to cook dinner. Can I get an "Oh Japan"? Regardless, because kids, Keiichi somehow gets roped into having a lunch cooking contest with all of the girls. Yeah, this is going to be amusing, but I guess that he's confident that he can, at the very least, cook better than Satako. Meanwhile, elsewhere in Okay Sod It, you know what? It has been a while, and while this is going to seem like random cultural nonsense, it's actually pretty damn interesting, and without it, you are going to struggle to make sense of geography later in the story, so random tangents go. Alright, I know we've had some big complaints about the tangents lately. Bloody hell, I wish I knew how to win this game. It's the bloody jump scares all over again. So I will try and keep this shortish. The term city in Japan. This is one that's confusing for foreigners, because the term city over there is used in a way that seems kind of fast and loose. When you hear city, you're probably thinking of a metropolis, maybe thinning to suburbs and industrial zones on the outskirts. In reality, a Japanese city can mean a variety of things, from a sprawling monster like Tokyo or Osaka, so ridiculously huge that it's a prefecture in its own right, to something like Yuri Honjo, one of the places where I worked like 2 decades ago now, commuting over from, I think it was Miyagi-ken, honestly, a moderately sized town and several tiny mountain villages spread out over a few hundred kilometers, all considered together to comprise a city. Confusing? Oh yeah. The reason for this weirdness, as with most weird shit in Japan, dates back to the feudal era, but mostly the Meiji period. So yeah, the tail end of that. Before then, regions in Japan were divided up into urban wards or ku, something you'll still find within sufficiently large cities like Tokyo, and rural wards or gun, to make administration easier and more uniform. Instead, a certain number of people living in an area would be grouped into an administrative region, forming a shi, or a city, primarily for, bureaucratic purposes. These cities would comprise, now this is where things get complicated, and you'll see the problem. English has one word for city, while Japan has a variety, each meaning something quite different. Cities, in this regional sense, generally comprise several villages and one larger town, and this town is generally where the name of this city region comes from. From there, you'll go up a step towards core cities, which are generally the administrative hubs of the prefecture. for instance Yamagata City in Yamagata Prefecture, and these tend these days to be where most of the people in that prefecture live. Now, as the countryside hollowed out during the recession, these regions were kind of fiddled around to keep them above the population needed for them to be classified as a city, as losing this status, 50,000 people or above, would mean losing a lot of autonomy and instead being divvied up and absorbed into other cities, at least in theory. So what they will do is they will expand out and gobble up another village, but as the government has never once done this sort of demotion, even when the numbers aren't there. For instance, in Hokkaido, this kind of regional fiddling is likely pointless. So, TLDR, city does not always mean, well, a city. It can also just mean a rural area of a certain populace comprising an administrative unit. Now, in the context of the story, keep this in mind. Hinamizawa is a village, but it's part of Shishibone-shi, or Shishibone City, containing it, as well as Okonomiya, remember where Angel Mort is, and a few other small villages quite a ways away. It also comprises Shishibone proper, likely simply a larger town called Shishibone. Confused? Don't worry too much about it. If you really need clarification, hit me up on the Discord and I will do my best. Anyways. In Shishibone proper, likely a largest town surrounded by villages, if you skip the tangent, we see Oishi and I think a young detective, a guy called Kuma. They found something pretty unpleasant. A female corpse has been found in a culvert. On examination, it shows evidence of extensive torture and mutilation, Oishi remarking that this must have something to do with the approaching festival in Hinamizawa, likely demarcating her, in his mind, as a sacrifice, meaning Sonozaki's, so yikes. Now, believe it or not, while we will never find out conclusively who this corpse was, the identity has been pieced together by fans, with a few more clues being given in the anime. It's not that important. We will go into it when we meet her. Meanwhile, Keiichi prepares for the little cook-off, and he rapidly finds a way to set fire to the damn kitchen, a feat that, despite my own mediocre abilities in cookery, I have never once pulled off. Satako and Rika show up in the nick of time and help him sort it all out. It's another pretty damn charming scene, especially once Satako offers to cook for him, so that he has something to eat at school the next day. Yeah, these tiny farm schools back then did not have cafeterias or any kind of school lunch, and while some school prefectures now do have lunch bentos delivered every day, even in the countryside, I don't think this was the case in the era Higurashi was written. We get a bit of dialogue suggesting that Satako, might be trying to woo Keiichi, which, let's not go there. These are all still minors, but again, let's not. And while she is not a good cook, Rika says that she is taking cooking him something incredibly seriously. Cool. Again, this is solid character writing. And why Satako has glomped onto him like this? Well, we will learn soon enough. Sure enough, Satako starts giving Keiichi a complete bollocking about the state of his fridge and his various cock-ups in the kitchen, kind of like Mrs. Owl. Okay, sorry. You know I'm right. But Rika says that this is the first time she's been this cheerful since her brother Satoshi vanished, as we learned in passing in the previous arc and also oh dears. I am going to give you a huge spoiler here and say that Satoshi's fate is so heavily tied into the answer to what is going on here that if you can puzzle it out, you will have half of the answers right there. But you won't really have enough in regards to the clues yet. But by the end of this volume you will, and by the end of Miyakushi you should. Yes, Miyakushi is the arc with that bit, widely regarded to be one of the squickiest moments in any mainstream anime, despite the fact that there's way, way worse stuff later. Hell, even later in the arc. We'll get there. But yeah, it's a bit messy, and we gradually learn that, at this point in the story, the dominant theory is that Satoshi didn't just vanish. He went out for a box of candy cigarettes, so to speak, and never returned. Anyways, we get a little bit more information about the young man and what happened. He was a bit of a klutz, but a really good-hearted dude. He did nearly everything for Satako, including getting her through some extremely tough times. Again, we will learn more about this later, but remember, their parents died as part of the curse, and that was only the start of it. At dinner, he gives Satako a genuine compliment regarding her cooking, which floors her and makes her all flustered. Oh, dude, I know you're also young, but I wouldn't. This egg hasn't even started to hatch yet, but we see that it is, at least in part, her seeing Satoshi in Keiichi. Remember, this is something that has been remarked on in both arcs thus far. He and Satoshi were eerily similar in a lot of ways. But this is pretty sad. She still refuses to accept that wherever he ran off to, he is likely not coming back. By dint of, if he was, he would already have done so. And despite her clinging to hope, we get a few hints as to how difficult it was for the two of them living in Hinamizawa after Mr. and Mrs. Hojo carked it. Oh boy, you've got no idea. Regardless, we learn a little bit more and find out that the dominant theory, which once again we will learn more about later, is that due to a very difficult living situation, he just couldn't handle it, snapped, bottled it, and ran away. Keiichi, however, asks what is hopefully the question that immediately came to your mind. Satoshi loved his little sister, so why would he just up and run away, abandoning her, rather than taking her with him wherever he went? Yeah, what's up with that? Keiichi begins asking questions and Rika, suddenly grave, begins to deflect. Oh dear. And as she leaves, Keiichi is left feeling a little sad. Yeah, this arc is a slow boil to start, although, in comparison, some of the later ones are dropping a Zippo into an Olympic swimming pool. Don't worry, once it starts moving, you will see why. It's probably my second favorite question arc. Anyway.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello all, this is Mrs. Owl, aka the other owl, aka the random snarky text interjections in Mr. Owl's videos. I just wanted to let everyone know that I'm offering a variety of my services at a very affordable price.
Phrasing?
Yeah, okay. But you know what I mean. And he better not have inserted that Archer clip over that.
Womp womp.
So for starters, my art commissions are still open. I can do everything from pixel art to animations to actual art. And if you want some examples of what I can do, I designed Mr. Owl's avatar, his intro, and all of his good thumbnails. Shh, don't tell him I said that. But if you want some fan art, an OC, an avatar, video thumbnails, an animation, or maybe a portrait or something for that important someone, whatever you want made, I'm sure we can figure something out. Now, to those of you aspiring authors, and there seem to be a good few of you on the Discord right now, I also have extensive experience proofreading and editing at a professional level, and I even design book covers. So whether it's a short story, a manga, a comic, or even academic essays or dissertations, I'm here to fix it up, polish it, and make sure it all works. And for those of you who've finished a book or graphic novel and are looking to get it read, we're offering a very special, all-inclusive editing and book cover package, and just to sweeten the deal, this will include a proper ad spot in one of Mr. Owl's videos. if you're interested, I'd snap that one up as soon as possible. So that's my side of things. If you're interested or want a quote or further information, hit me up at my business email or coffee, all links in the description. Much appreciated, and now we return to our regularly scheduled owl.
The next day, the cooking contest is, it's kind of a waste. Just a lot of faffing around. I mean, it's cute and all, but like a few things in the first volume of Tatarigoroshi, it's really pointless, and it only contributes to the already slow pace. I think they may have punched it up a little bit in the anime, but the pacing of the anime, that's another video. Long story short, they end up giving Keiichi a pass on his terrible attempt, but it's all very clearly set up to be nice to Satako, who appears to be in a bit of a wobbly mood, likely due to the events of last night, leaving her feeling really conflicted. And apologies if there are any watery or birdie noises, it's raining outside and the magpies are going insane because of it. Oh right, the penalty for this game is to insult curry in front of their homeroom teacher, who is kind of scary and also a curry fiend. And it turns into this whole I'm Spartacus thing, But it does, yet again, allow Keiichi to grow closer to Satako in a pure big brother sort of way. Let's just go with that. Okay. They actually do fall into a sort of henpecked husband, grumpy housewife dynamic though, which, married life. They do continue to bond over cooking, with Satako cooking him dinner and them falling into a pretty wholesome tempo, especially when he needs to pinch a loaf suddenly and asks her where the bog is, rather crudely, resulting in her pretending to be embarrassed, only it's another trap and he gets bonked. You little rascal, that looks like a heavy metal tub. There's a fine line between haha, I gotcha, and haha, you're going to the urgent care. Kids. Regardless, they kind of wind up living together, at least while his parents are away. Don't overthink this, under the guise of her cooking for him, but it really being, okay. Again, I am going to avoid being crass and just say that it's likely her finally starting to process her grief regarding Satoshi up and leaving the way he did. Okay, now these two panels are interesting, as I'm not sure who's narrating. It could be Satako, but it could also be our mysterious Bern Castell. Regardless, whoever it is, we see them wishing that the good days would keep going, but knowing that things are about to go horribly wrong. I guess she also read the manga. Yeah, this is Bern Castell, I think. Later, we see that Keiichi's parents are going to be coming home soon. Seriously, feed your kid! And while Satako puts a brave face on it, she's secretly crushed. Their little life together will be coming to an end in her mind, so Keiichi, because he's a really good dude, tells her that next time he will come over to her place, under the pretense of her teaching him to cook. Again, it's a really sweet moment. As she leaves, Keiichi muses, where did Satoshi go? Why did he leave his sister behind? When will he come back? Yeah, dude, I wouldn't. This is something that I've always referred to as toxic hope. And believe you me, that shit will destroy you. Ask Louis Creed, and if you get that reference, well done. Gage! The next day, through a funny misunderstanding, Keiichi is summoned to another school, this one in Okonomiya. And due to a crossed wire, he showed up thinking that there was going to be some sort of brawl, grabbed one of his doucher father's golf clubs on the way. Seriously, if there's a predictor of someone being a doucher, it's owning a set of seldom used golf clubs. Sorry, not sorry. He shows up, and it's actually a baseball game against, this entire sequence is completely pointless, aside from giving us more of an example of Keiichi's ability to persuade people and bring them together by, I guess, finding their buttons. This will, believe it or not, wind up being really, really important as we go. In this case, he bribes their ringer into letting them win with Horny. Not even slightly kidding. It's a pointless sequence and honestly kind of overlong. Yeah, I love this manga and it is, in my opinion, top 3 manga of all time. But while yes, I get that these little sequences give characters and tone a chance to breathe, we also spend way too long watching characters fart-arsing around, and it does get a bit much sometimes. Regardless, as it so happens, he need not have bothered, as Satako, whatever her cooking abilities may be, is actually a gifted sportsman, woman, person. I don't know what I'm supposed to say for this shit anymore. Satoko hit ball good, okay? Keiichi realizes that Dr. Irie, remember, the boyish blonde-headed dude from the clinic, is there spectating and cheering Satoko on. He's actually their coach, as it turns out. Okay, so this is, as far as I understand it, a translation error, but we're not going to dwell on it, it's really not important. But oh dears, this is gonna have subtext later, and he takes them all out for yakiniku to celebrate. Now, I may have mentioned it before, but you've probably seen it in some Japanese media here and there, and it's one of the many things that I miss about Japan pretty much daily. You get a little booth or a table, which has a gas-based grill at its center. You then are given meat and veggies, cut into conveniently mouthful-sized pieces, which you then grill and eat fresh. It absolutely rules. And it's the only dining experience I would put on par with Brazilian barbecue. Now, there are 2 kinds generally. One is fancy, where you order specific platters and cuts, often of really high-end beef and including booze. You're looking at $100, maybe a few $100 all told, depending on the size of the table and how much you eat. If it's part of a hostess bar, where they will literally pop the meat into your mouth, you're looking at a few hundred a person, but I've only seen this once in the wild, and that was in Morioka. And Morioka's a weird place. The other kind, and my absolute favorite, is generally referred to as Viking style or tabehodai, i.e. all you can eat. This is a buffet of a crapzillion different cuts of meat, ranging from delicious rump steak and a certain fatty rib cut called karubi, which, it's so good, to stuff like chicken livers and pig hearts, as well as veg. But there are often other things, like ice cream or even a crepe bar. This will generally run you 2,000 to 4,000 yen a person, so about 30 to 50 bucks, with a 2 to 3 hour time limit, and the only extra fee would be booze. These rule. And if you ever find your way to Japan, see if you can find your way to one of these. Stamina Taro is a particularly good chain of Viking restaurants, and naturally their yakiniku lunch all erupts into fun chaos, and after, Keiichi and Irie fall into a discussion and okay, here we go, here's that bit. One of 2 bits in Higurashi that are really controversial, and let's say there's discourse about it, but maybe not as much as there should be. And honestly, this bit is so contentious that, you know what, I am going to give it its own little tangent just in case I have to remove it, because YouTube is death on this stuff. What do I mean? Well, anyways, this shouldn't take too long. After lunch, Keiichi and Irie fall into a conversation, with Irie remarking that it's really good to see Satoko happy, and says that one day he's going to propose to her. That's really— wait, what the dilly? Come again! I mean, it's a manga where everyone looks about 13 going on 45, but how old is Irie? Okay, with a bit of looking around, the consensus puts him at around my age, early 40s, so too old to want to marry an 11-year-old. There's a little bit more to this, which we will talk about in just a bit. But okay, so, this will need to be handled very delicately, and not just because YouTube calls in the orbital canon if you even look like you're going to discuss this topic. Which is why I had to do the whole elephant shtick in Made in Abyss. Oh boy, you loved that. but because it's really hard to talk about Irie and his character without spoiling a lot of things to come. So, short version. This isn't a misunderstanding, whatever certain readers would have you believe. Irie has feelings for Satoko. The nature of those feelings are up for debate, and I know, there is a little bit of subtlety here. Again, we will discuss this in the next section, but even in the context of the story, it's not something that is ever addressed or brought up. Not even in the context of Hello 911 or Holy crap, no dude, not cool. Instead, spoiler, Irie is generally framed in the story as a heroic or at worst morally grey trending towards white character. Sorta kinda, no spoilers, who knows? I may very well be tricking you all. But what is interesting is the discourse surrounding this. Now, this is anime and manga fans we're talking about, and also, internet. So it's hard to know how serious anyone is being versus just being contrarian or a massive troll, but this discussion tends to go in one of three directions. Firstly, people say that yes, Irie is definitely peddling files, whatever his reasons. They rely not only on this, but on material that was cut from the anime, but still included in the manga for some reason, where, for instance, Irie talks about how much he likes little kids in maid costumes, and also, kind of flirts with Keiichi, which, wow, there is subtext here, especially once we get later into the manga. It is not subtle, and there is not much room for interpretation. The second is people saying no, Irie is just very quirky and very Japanese, relying on the fact that this sort of thing is often viewed as a valid vector for comedy, or even an actual character trait. We will talk about this in greater depth way later in Gantz, that does not automatically designate a villain. They also rely on the fact that, for reasons we will learn gradually, he is both protective of and extremely sympathetic towards Satoko outside of this greasiness. The third is just basically people telling anyone who wants to discuss this to fuck off and leave their manga alone. Not that serious, bruh, go outside. You know how it be. Now, my own feelings on this one, well, I am going to say that, by and large, I fall into the first category. Irie is a creeper at best and an actual orbiter at worst, as even by Japanese standards, 11 is young, and falls into a word that, I can't use this on the YouTubes anymore, but it rhymes with brolicon. Brolicon, oh dear, that was not a good idea. Please do not use the term brolicon ever in any context. This is not something that needs to be a thing. Please don't tell me I made this a thing. Oh dear. Now, that said, I do have to qualify this by Japanese standards, as there is a part of the culture where, while things are, let's say, modernizing a little bit, is still perhaps a bit too tolerant of this sort of thing. And outside of the entire wretched should drawn brolicon and actual CESM material be treated the same debate, which, no thanks, this is a fun channel, but things aren't quite as illegal as they should be over there, including really serious stuff. And we will leave that discussion well enough alone. Again, there is one more wrinkle here that, alright, it is one of the few good points that people in Group 2 do tend to bring up if they're smart, but we're not going to do a nested tangent, so we will do a quick thing when we get there. In conclusion, we're just going to be ignoring this moving forwards. It doesn't factor into the story much, but yeah, Irie, you're kinda greasy, mate. Let's get back to the story. As the two continue talking, we get a bit of exposition regarding Satoshi's vanishing/running away. Due to the curse, his and Satoko's parents died. At this point, it's described as an accident, but as we've already had this attributed to either a vengeful local deity in Onikakushi or possibly Sonozaki Vengeance, punishing them for being tolerant of the dam project and thus disloyal to the village, we can definitely chalk that up as anything but an accident. After Rika's parents were similarly killed or vanished, and presumably after Satoshi ran away, the two began living together. Because, well, things had gotten rather unpleasant for the two siblings. See, while Rika's family were beloved, folks who tend the local shrine do tend to be respected, if not revered, in small villages, but due to their perceived betrayal, Satako's were not. And as is unfortunately still the way in Japan, grudges like this extended to their children. This meant that even as very young kids, desperately needing help and protection, the two siblings were shunned, mistreated, and worse. And here we go. This is the wrinkle I was talking about. Irie, seeing this, decided that he wanted to... Again, this is probably the only salient point the Irie is not peddling files crowd have, in my opinion, and you folks should argue this one more, because he says that if he'd been allowed to, he'd have adopted her, but because only married people can adopt a child in Japan, which is actually true by the way, and remains so to this day, although this may eventually change. So you could frame his desire to marry Satako. If you wanted to be insanely charitable, you could recontextualize it as a method of protecting her and becoming essentially her father, rather than anything less savory, although honestly, at a balance of probabilities with all the other evidence we have on hand, nah, sorry mate, I trust you as far as I can throw an anvil. Regardless, the two bond over a desire to make Satako happy, another one that's going to have subtext later, boy howdy, especially once Shion shows up. And everyone starts talking in a pervy way about Satako. Bloody hell, Japan, I am not going to read this shit out loud. Feel free, it's on screen, and keep it in mind for later, especially frigging Miyakushi. As night falls, and the cicadas begin to cry, which, remember, does tend to gradually herald everything going sideways. We get a bit between Keiichi and Shion. Remember, she's absolutely moggy over him. As with all the girls, Higurashi is, at least in part, a pitch-black skewering of the harem subgenre, and after a bit of back and forth, they begin discussing Satoshi. If you recall, this was a sore point between the sisters back in Watanagashi, for reasons that'll be revealed in Miyakushi again. But remember, Shion was deeply in love with Satoshi. She seems a little sad, but friendly, until he asks her about him, running away. Oh right, there's this whole thing, as you may remember from Onikukushi, that everyone was told that he transferred schools, implying a legitimate reason to leave, and nothing weird. Now this doesn't gel with the whole he ran away thing, and sure enough, Shion's reaction, oh, you've stepped right in this, mate. She immediately flies into a towering, incandescent fury, demanding to know who told him that he transferred schools. Girlie? Ran away or transferred? You're kind of crashing out over semantics here. And seeming to realize this, she apologizes and withdraws, leaving him shaken. Yeah, that was a reaction. What exactly is going on here? Keiichi returns home a little bit worried, sensing that there's something about this puzzle that doesn't make sense, and all he knows is whatever is going on here seems very, very wrong. The next day is a pretty good one, with fun in the sun as usual, but Keiichi finds that he's still uneasy, remembering Shion's insane overreaction. What on earth was that? Transferred? Ran away? What's the difference exactly? But wait, maybe there is something there. Why would there be such a difference in stories? If the dominant narrative is that he's a runaway, why keep up this pretense of it being a simple move via the whole transferred to another school narrative? It's not like running away would be a huge deal. especially considering that Satoshi was an orphan who, by the sounds of it, was not widely liked and was actually getting it from all sides thanks to his parents' sins. Again, why would people care this much? No, that doesn't quite work. But this is Hinamizawa, meaning that there are some topics best left alone. Only, of course, he doesn't, and before they leave, he comes right out with it and asks the older girls, presumably thinking that they would know more, if, well, they know anything. Not surprisingly, they parrot the "he transferred to a different school" line, but Keiichi, as he's not completely dumb, senses a hesitation. There is definitely more to this story. If these girls are telling you pork pies, it doesn't take long for them to realize that he is not buying their story. But rather than seeming angry, they actually look kind of guilty and maybe a little worried. Oh bugger. Keiichi tries to reassure them, clicking that they might have been hiding the truth that he ran away from Satako in order to give her hope. But no. Rena turns, looks him dead in the eye, and, seemingly reading his mind, simply says that Satoshi will never return. He asks her what she means by this. Where did he go? And, now grave, Rena says that she doesn't know. It actually seems like she's about to add something else to this when Mion interjects. And this is where the arc begins to pick up. We retread some familiar ground. Satoshi withdrew all of his savings and then promptly vanished. All that anyone, including the police, would discover is that apparently somebody saw him, or at least someone that may have been the young man, at Nagoya Station, so quite a ways away. However, Rena says quietly that this is not true. She then, oh dear, that's not a good face. She says that he must have fallen victim to Oyashiro's curse. Yeah, okay, here we go. It's been a while since I've had to say this, but please pay very, very close attention. This shit isn't just important, it is crucial. If you've been paying attention, you are about to be handed a piece of the overall puzzle. A corner piece. Like, this is where, if you start thinking in the right way, you can actually have a large portion of the manga solved before we get to the answers arcs. She says that Satoshi had been haunted by Oyashiro-sama. Everywhere he went, someone was following him. Someone just out of the edge of vision, always drawing closer. Footsteps and whispers. And then, one night, Satoshi woke up to see that someone or something was in his room, standing there looking down at him. Rena becomes more and more agitated, saying that Oyashiro isn't just a protector. He viciously punishes anyone who displays disloyalty to the village. And Satoshi, likely because of his parents and because of how he was treated, was almost certainly harboring thoughts of leaving, meaning that he would have been fair game for the curse. Rena begins to go more and more wild until, alright, this is interesting. Again, if you've been paying attention, you're gonna twig onto something here, but I am not spelling it out, as while it's very subtle, it is a huge clue. Rena says that the entire ran away thing is a concoction, an invention by the village and people who don't actually believe in the vengeful deity. But before she can continue, Mion pivots and slaps her hard. Oh dear. Yeah, I think I know what you were about to say, Rena. It would not have been smart, and Mion may have, in her way, just saved your life. We skip ahead an indeterminate, but likely not extended period in time, and it appears that after that happened, things rapidly became okay. The pair made up, and Rena headed off, leaving Mion and Keiichi to walk home together. We get another extended dialogue sequence, giving us, honestly, quite a lot of new information, or at least reminding us of stuff we learned in Onikakushi. In short, Satoshi's parents were among a few families willing to chance Oyashiro's wrath because, in order to build this dam, the government was offering a very generous compensation package to the people who would have been displaced. A small fortune to folks living in a tiny farming village. But saying this out loud would not have been a good idea. Mion essentially ends up saying that, yeah, this is not a topic you would have wanted to even really think out loud in Hinamizawa. And as she leaves, she actually asks Keiichi to please drop it. Just stop discussing Satoshi around Satako, as it's a really sad situation, but also Rena. Because, well, remember, Rena is on big red pills due to her going completely mental in another town. And that, despite her amicable appearance, Rena is not someone to be trifled with. She can actually be really, really scary when riled. Oh dears. And even more disturbed, Keiichi goes home and turns in for the night as the cicadas cry outside and slips into uneasy dreams, which we will actually get to in a moment. The next day, a very concerned Rika shows up to school and says that Satako is going to be late, but refuses to elaborate. Uh-oh. Mion intervenes, and after consulting Mrs. Owl, it's possible that she wrongly believes that this might have been, the cardinal arriving for the first time. Bloody hell. I have no idea how to put that diplomatically. But Rena and Keiichi talk, and he is deeply troubled by all that he's learned, starting to worry that this marks an end to good times. Well, dude, you're not wrong, but Rena replies with a version of one of my favorite little sayings. Essentially, that we always fear good times ending, but we cannot let that stop us from enjoying the good times. Be glad that it's happening and not sad that it will end. She also says, and frigging holy shit, put a massive pin in this one, I have only just picked up on it, but she says that for all they know, a disaster could occur today and kill everyone but him. And then he would be sitting around going, oh man, I wish that I'd enjoyed my time with my friends more, not spending my days worrying about stuff I can't change. Yeah, Rena, it's a nice sentiment, but this is also how you wind up with all the STDs and 3 alimonies. That said, this does give us a little bit more insight into Rena. Deep down, she's actually really anxious and an overthinker, but likely after what happened elsewhere, has resolved to live her life as lightly as she can, having as much fun and enjoying her time with her friends. He also says that he's really troubled by a nightmare that he had last night, and holy shit again, pin, huge pin. We will cut back just a bit, because this is what he saw. And turning this image around a bit and looking at it clearly, that is Satoko's bloody face. Only she was smiling. And for some reason, that troubled him deeply. But that said, despite his unease, Rena does manage to cheer him up. However, the morning goes by, they enter the afternoon, and as the end of school rolls in, Satako still has yet to put in an appearance at all. This does not bode well. Later that day, Oishi appears, and Keiichi, for some reason, I think this paneling implies that he was also in the dream, goes from being uneasy to being genuinely worried. All he knows for sure is that he does not want Oishi here, not right now, as his arrival will signal the start of something truly dreadful. But despite his misgivings, Keiichi chooses to speak to the ominous detective, only he's not really here to talk with Keiichi this time, Loop. I can do better. But he's actually here to speak with Satako, and that is not good at all. especially when we see that this panel is what closes Volume 1. So, sorry folks, that'll have to wait until next time. Which is where the arc, goes insane, and you will see why I like this one so much. But I promise you, you shouldn't have to wait too long. Why? Well, that'll be something we announce soon. Like, soon. Anyways, before we finish for the day, I just want to say a great big owl thanks, as always, to our amazing patrons, without whom this video really wouldn't exist. I am not kidding. With inflation what it is, and us often struggling to make rent month to month, this channel really does live and die on your generosity. So yeah, if you're looking for someone to thank for making these folks are your first stop. Oh, and with a bunch of new people coming in, people leaving, and channel memberships, I'm sorry, I always forget you guys. I'm almost certainly gonna cock this up. Please let me know in the comments if I miss you. Cheshire Quill, Cookie Dough, Cam Trigger, Melissa Marston, BK, Taylor Smith, Ang, Alice Teacup, Melly Pepper, Sam Glasper, Brendan, Majestic, The Spilled Milk, Kamarian Lindsay, Taylor Smith, Tak2M, Sefet, Anna MC, Mew Haku, Huna Hexchen, Ad Clear Andrew, Nate Corbin, Fluffy Burb, Kamolian, Endymion, Jake, B Empress, Simone, Squid, The Hedgehog Gamer, Rafferty, Hermit, Yorgborg, William, Oishipan, Erin Arnolds, Sallyface, Kozen Doji 180, JMD Reed, Mootle, Maverick Mooner, Hamwise the Stout, Gunslinger Zero, Jalen R, Mike, Chilled Ice, Ranger Danger, Rose Montgomery, Inukie Koji, John Knepp, Cal Core, Opinion Custard, Robert Dote, Wargle, Hunting Ferratu D2, Jalen R, Lee, Eleanor, Crazy, Question Man 6, Ring Miskel, Callie Caris, JL, Lance Goebel, Piece of Yeast, Lightspeed, Jathis, and Fogweaver. As I said, I'm also sure that there's at least one person I've forgotten, so to you, my apologies and thanks anyway. And yeah, as always, I also want to say a special thanks to Jathis and Fogweaver, our Albard patrons. These guys are a big part of how we survive right now. Trust me, so thank you for your generosity. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, comment, and all of that good jazz. It really does help us out in terms of the YouTube algorithm, which, And otherwise, if you want to support this channel, please consider patroning up. You will get access to some pretty fun perks like exclusive emotes on the Discord, an exclusive channel, early access to videos, an exclusive video, my book, which will hopefully get some updates soon, a couple of other things, all good stuff. White Whistle and Albard patrons can also commission videos, with Albards being able to commission deep dives, and patrons as a whole having a lot of input on what manga I cover on this channel and how. If you do fancy supporting us in other ways, you could leave us one of those super thanks things. And as I said in the ad spot, Mrs. Owl's art commissions and her editing services are still available. So if you're looking for something like that as a birthday present, or just an OC, or some help with your own comic, book, or manga, all of her links are, as always, in the description. Cheers, my friends, and thanks again. Until next time, this is the Owl, signing off.